Hello. Yeah. Hello. Hi. Testing. One, two, three. Can maintain this. Right.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome back to the last day of CIDES 2023. Dear visitors, you are pleased to come and take your seat because our show will start in another 5 minutes and we're offering you the free swags offered by the Google team itself. Please come and enjoy the show. Thank you. Welcome once again. Here, amazing people, please come and take your seats. No guts, no worries. The seat is all yours, all right? Because we're gonna have to offer you free swags exclusively brought by Google for those who just came here. Please welcome and feel free to have a seat. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you can take selfie because the program before the program starts, okay? All right, awesome. So before we start, how's everyone doing? Great. How are you doing after lunch? Is it the food okay? Great. All right. Thank you very much for taking your time here to spend your time here because we're going to see a very brilliant presentation. Comes from our Mr. Edwin Raja here. We talk about Chronicle Security Operations with the power of Google Cloud. Without further ado, Mr. Edwin Raja, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edwin Raja. I'm a customer engineer with Google Cloud Security. Maybe before I begin, can I just get a show of hands? How many of you actually know that Google does security as well, apart from being just a search engine? Show of hands. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. All right. What are we talking about today, right? So we're in the midst of what we call as a perfect cybersecurity storm, right? Where there are a lot of different attack vectors, a lot of different issues that organizations around the world are facing, right? One of it is increasing threat actor activities. There are a lot of different threat groups, both nation state sponsored. We've seen the emergence of a lot of different types of threat actors over the last year itself. And that combined with, a skills shortage in cybersecurity, right? So we understand that, security has become a data problem, but there's also a lack of manpower to actually drive all of these issues forward, right? How do you actually solve a problem if you cannot hire, the right people with the right skill set to get the job done? And lastly, with rising complexity, right? So we're not just talking about, traditional on-premises networks. We're moving our workloads to the cloud. Oops. We are moving our networks into the various cloud environments. And this is also complemented by, using containers in the cloud, IoT. So you're not just restricted to anything on premise, right? So all of these factors combined are actually bringing up a lot of different types of issues that we're seeing right now. But Google itself, we see a lot of internet traffic, right? So a lot of traffic passes through the Google backbone. And, a lot of customers who are using Chrome and Gmail. We see a lot of different types of attack campaigns, a lot of, attacks which are being placed. And if you are familiar with what Google Cloud Platform offers, we have something called, Security Command Center, right? This actually allows you to analyze, what's happening in real time in your cloud environments, right? So we talk about cloud security posture management. And lastly, VirusTotal, also part of Google Cloud, in case you didn't know, we also analyze millions and billions of samples every day, right? Threat researchers are actually using them. So coming back to where we are, right? How did it all begin? The journey of what I'm going to talk to you about security operations. How did it all start? So roughly about 10, 12 years ago. So I'm not sure if you know, but Google was hacked. Right? It was breached. We actually identified it. We came out in the news to say, hey, this is actually what happened on it. And we walked through the entire process, right? And out of this, we also actually published what we call as a 6-part series on YouTube, in case you haven't heard about it. It's called Operation Aurora Hacking Google, right? So it talks you through how this entire attack actually started, how Google identified it, and moving on, what were some of the learning lessons that we took away. Right? And it also gives you insights on, Google as a company. How do we actually secure ourselves, right? How do we protect Google against Google? How do we protect, the customers around the world who are using Google services, right? So it's pretty interesting. But out of Operation Aurora, it's that's where we realized that, hey, we're actually collecting a lot of data, a lot of information. How can we make sense out of this, and make, a product as well, right? And this also ties into some of the traditional challenges that we are seeing in security operations, right? So in security operations, where customers, organizations around the world, they're having, what we've identified as 6 key areas of concerns, right, or troubles or issues. The first one being, they're not able to, store and analyze all their data on the platform, right? So if you think about, traditional SIEM tools where you deploy them on your premise, right? You're restricted by how much of storage you can actually have, how much of data you can actually put in. And if you actually need to expand, meaning bring in extra log sources, understand what is happening, it becomes very costly, right? So you're not able to scale, right? So these kind of deployments might have worked, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but now as you have a lot of data coming in, you have a lot of information that you want to monitor, it becomes harder to make sense out of it. It's also a cost issue because sometimes we find that organizations are actually not able to ingest the amount of data that they should be getting in, right? So because of cost constraints, resource constraints, you only have to pick and choose how much of data you're going to bring into your security platform. Now, taking too long to investigate the alerts. So we talked about the attack surface actually expanding, right? So you're no longer talking about on-premise environments. We have cloud IoT. How do you actually ingest all the alerts and understand very quickly what is happening in your environment, right? Because the longer time that you actually take to detect what's happening in your cloud environment, this means that the attackers have the advantage over you. Now, struggling to build, effective detection rules, right? So we talk about, SIEM tools. You need to be able to build out detection rules, right? How do you actually, teach the SIEM to determine, what's an attack? How do you actually, fine-tune a lot of these parameters to ensure that you're reducing the false positive rate and you're always able to keep up with whatever's coming in? Having processes which are too manual, right? So certain organizations, sometimes you're not automating a lot of tasks. It means that your analysts are actually having to perform all these tasks manually. Right? So imagine, you hire someone, you spend like 6 months to 1 year to actually train them, and they're actually spending a lot of time doing manual tasks, right? So they start, the SOC analyst starts their shift. They go in, they open up the console, they have, hundreds and thousands of alerts to actually look at. And, even before lunch, right, they haven't gotten through even, like 10% of the alerts, right? So that contributes to a lot of alert fatigue. And lastly, it goes back into, you're not having enough skilled engineers, right? So it's always hard to find someone and then train them and ensure they actually know what they're doing. So how do we actually incorporate, all of this together, right? Together with the biggest buzzword that you're hearing now, which is AI, right? So the start of 2023, was pretty quiet, and then suddenly there was a lot of popularity around, ChatGPT, using AI, and a lot of innovations by a lot of different companies. So how is Google actually, incorporating AI into our products as well, right? I'll cover this a bit in detail later. But basically, how can you actually quickly stop your threats, right? Identify and prevent, the patient zeros. How do you use AI to actually reduce toil, right? Can you automatically generate detection rules? Can you quickly build out playbooks? Can you identify false positives? And lastly, how do you combine AI with the limited resources that we have right now, right? So if you're finding it hard to actually, hire and train an analyst, how do you actually use AI to complement, the workflow that you're currently having? So what Google is trying to do is basically, to reimagine security operations, right? So this is how it was previously done. How can we do it better moving forward? And we do this by doing what we call as bringing the power of Google into security operations. So what is this all about, right? So there's 6 key pillars that we talked about, right? Number 1 being having a platform where you can actually ingest all of your data. And when you're doing a search on the platform, it's going to give you results as quickly as running a Google search, right? So imagine a platform where you can pump in, petabytes of information, of raw logs. We can ingest it at scale and give you the output that you need when you do a search, right? So something that traditional SIEM tools are not able to do. We do it at a disruptive cost, right? So if you think about, how cost prohibitive it is to ingest all of the data on your platform, how does Google actually do it, right? So we all do it at a cheaper price because we're leveraging on the economies of scale, right? So the Chronicle Security Operations platform is actually built on the core Google infrastructure, right? So the same platform which powers, Google search and YouTube, that's where Chronicle sits, right? So we're able to harness what the platform can actually give you to give you those speed capabilities. And number 3, because you're actually able to run quick searches and get faster results, you have information readily available at your fingertips, right? And number 4, by leveraging Google Intelligence, right? So we had VirusTotal, where we're actually incorporating threat intelligence data. And late last year, Google actually acquired Mandiant, which is a leader in the incident response field, and they also have threat intelligence capabilities, right? So now we have more products to actually offer to our customers. And automated response, so we talk about how can you incorporate a SOAR platform, right? Security orchestration, automation, and response. How do we bring that together to actually speed up the response process? And lastly, how can you incorporate, some of Google's best practices, right? So if you watch the 6-part video, what are some of the key takeaways that you can get from how Google defends Google? So talking a bit more about, these 2 platforms, right? SIEM and SOAR, right? Which are the 2 biggest components in this, we're actually able to leverage and give you, faster investigation, better decisions, and lesser time between the 2 of them, right? So talking about, the Chronicle platform itself, right? So firstly, being able to store at least about 12 months worth of data in a hot state, right? So if you're familiar with how traditional SIEM tools work, you might be able to have maybe 3 months or 6 months max worth of data, right? Anything more than that is going to cost you, right? So it's going to be more expensive to bring the data in. So Chronicle by default can give you at least 12 months worth of logs. So any enterprise environment, organization, you benefit immediately out of this, right? Being able to do a quick Google search, right? So searching for an hash, an IP, a URL, or a host name, or an asset, you get that information available to you quickly. Building out detection rules, so we do it in a different language called YARA-L. So how quickly can you build the detection rules? But more importantly, in the latest slide, how can we use AI to actually help us to build out the detection rules, right? And Chronicle SOAR. So Chronicle SOAR was another company that Google actually acquired. So we incorporate these 2 platforms together to give you the response process, right? So now it's an end-to-end flow, right? You ingest your data into your SIEM platform, you correlate the analysis, and then you pass it on to your SOAR platform for response, where you already have all the different playbooks which are running, right? So this is a completely automated workflow, which speeds up the process of handling an incident, right? And also being able to collaborate, right? In a SOC, it's all about collaboration, right? So you have a team of analysts who are working together, maybe across different shifts as well. How quickly can they pass the information on to each other? How can they share details? If they have questions about a particular case, how can they collaborate in the platform, right? And lastly, being able to track and measure your metrics, right? So if you can actually understand, what are the areas for improvement, that gives you ability to improve that as well. And leveraging, virus total in the background. So, every search that you run on Chronicle, we check virus total, right? Which is the biggest threat observatory in the world. So we can actually correlate the data and give you the information back directly on the platform itself. Okay. So what are some of our customers actually saying about the product, right? So in terms of security operations, Chronicle SIM and SOAR, right, you don't have to worry about whether you can afford to monitor and ingest data, right? So organizations are no longer restricted by, hey, I can only afford to pay this amount, so this means I have to remove certain log sources, right? I can now actually ingest everything that I need and make sense out of it because it's available to me. And being one of the few platforms today that continues innovations, right? So we are continually improving the product by itself, incorporating new features, new capabilities to help with this flow. And of course, the most exciting part, right? How are we actually incorporating AI into all of this, right? So the Security AI Workbench is built on top of what we call as SecPalm 2, right? So PALM is actually a large language learning model, and SecPalm is the security operations or the security use cases that we are building on top of that, right? And what we actually have envisioned is the ability to extend a lot of these capabilities, right? So as a customer, how do you actually use AI on the platform, right? How can it improve your workflow, right? If we're talking about any partners who actually need to use the platform, how can you extend the capabilities, right? Meaning leverage on the power of what the AI capabilities can give you and extend those capabilities, as well as how we're going to incorporate other tools, right? For example, Security Command Center on GCP, Threat Intelligence Chronicle. How do we improve the workflow and operations from that, right? And a lot of this is built on top of Vertex AI for Google Platform. So if you're interested, you can actually go into GCP platform to try out the Vertex AI capabilities as well, right? So what are some of the use cases of SecPalm, right? So built on top of security use cases. If we just talk about maybe the core capabilities, right? So we have the ability to summarize, classify, and generate, right? So in terms of summarization, why is it actually needed, right? So we have a lot of security jargon, right? So every few months you have new buzzwords which are coming out, which take a while to catch on, then you need to understand what it's actually all about. And each vendor has their own way of doing things, right? So there's no standardized approach across the industry, right? So what if you could have an AI model to actually quickly summarize what has happened, right? Go through hundreds of pages worth of reports and actually give you quick, intelligible insights from there. Being able to classify, so for example, if you upload a code sample to Virus Total, right, can we actually identify the background of the code and quickly give you a summary that, hey, we've actually seen this before, what is this actually all about? And lastly, being able to generate, right, so using AI to build out, for example, detection rules in Chronicle SIM, being able to build a playbook out as well automatically for you and recommend some improvements for that along the way. So for Virus Total, the code insights, you can see in this example how we can actually upload a piece of file into Virus Total. You let it perform the analysis, and you can see that, hey, actually, there are no engines which have flagged it out, right? So no engines, but we can actually look at the code inside, which is actually running in the background to show you that, hey, no engines have actually found this to be malicious yet, but based on the code that we're actually seeing on the file itself, it could be malicious, right? So giving the analyst an additional layer of insight into what actually has happened, right? So you're no longer just restricted to, for example, looking at the plain output that we're looking from Virus Total. How can you actually get more details out of it as well? Okay. The next one, right? So Duet AI for Mandiant threat intelligence. So Mandiant, as I mentioned, is now part of Google Cloud. How can you actually, use the AI capabilities to summarize through threat intelligence reports, right? Perhaps running a search for anything related to Ukraine, we can actually go across the entire reports that we actually have and give you intelligence out of it, right? So you start to see the idea of how you can actually use AI to incorporate into your existing workflow to give more value to the analysts, right? So now, as a SOC analyst, you're no longer looking through pages of reports, understanding whether something is malicious. You actually have the AI capabilities to help you understand what is happening on the background as well. Duet AI for Chronicle, right? So on Chronicle SIM, you can actually build out searches as well, and this will automatically help you to generate what we call as a UDM search, right? So in the past, an analyst would have to manually build out the query, right? Or maybe you have something out of the box, you run the query, but it takes time to learn, right? So if you have an analyst to train, how quickly can they, get up to speed and understand what is happening on the platform? Now you can actually use the AI capabilities to build out a query for you as well, right? So that takes away, a lot of effort from the analyst. They can simply run a search like, hey, find me all the files which have been tagged as confidential being sent out from this particular network or this group of users, right? We automatically build the detection rule for you and show the results to the analyst. And lastly, Duet AI for Chronicle SOAR, right? So on the SOAR platform, we're going to give you insights on what has happened, right? So the alert comes in, you have all the playbooks which are running and automating a lot of the different processes, right? Now, from there, how quickly can the analyst actually understand what has happened, right? Because it's all about context, If the analyst is looking at, a lot of different results, it takes a while for them to understand, hey, what is happening? Is this alert related to another alert? Is this part of a bigger attack that I'm not actually seeing right now? Now we can actually use AI capabilities to generate a summary, right? So being able to summarize, exactly what has happened in the case itself, giving the analyst more context and information. Right? So these 4 examples, you can actually see how Google is planning to, once again, improve and innovate on how we can use the AI capabilities on a lot of the different products that we actually have, right? But it all translates to the same outcome, which is basically improving security operations, right? If you're using, VirusTotal as a threat intel, if you're using Chronicle SIM and SOAR to actually run SOC operations, how quickly can you use AI to get the most value out of it? Okay. And my last 2 slides, I think. So talking about how you can actually leverage on the power of Google, right? So Google, beyond just being a search engine, there are a lot of different capabilities that we offer, right? So if you are, a Google search customer, how can you actually use that? If you're a workspace customer, we also have some improvements on how we are bringing AI to those platforms, right? If you talk about, Google Cloud Platform as a service, how can we actually, use, for example, like Security Command Center to understand what's happening in your cloud environment in real time? Right? Just to share, so if you are using GCP platforms or VMs, right, one of the biggest attack vectors is actually crypto mining, meaning that an attacker can come in, if your VMs are not properly secured, they can compromise the VM and just basically use it to mine any sort of coins, right, any sort of cryptocurrency. So what can SCC do is basically help you to quickly understand, hey, are any of the VMs actually compromised, right? So firstly, we can do a posture assessment. Right? Understanding, how can you improve the security of your entire cloud platform, right? And from there, identify, hey, in real time, if there are any, VMs which have been compromised, which have been infected by, a threat actor, how quickly can you identify it and stop the attack, right? So we have customers, once you're actually impacted, you run up, thousands of dollars in bills, right? So how can you actually use SCC as an example to help with that? Right, and of course, talking about workspace, VirusTotal, and Mandiant threat intel, there's a lot of different services that Google's actually offering as well. Right, so if you're interested to get started on this journey, right, of actually transforming your security operations, right, how can you actually go about it, right? So it seems like a big step to take when you're talking about, if you have an existing SIM. How can you actually replace it, right? Because there's a lot of information and data there, right? No organization that we go to would say, hey, I'm going to migrate, in 3 months' time, I'm going to move everything out, right? I don't care about the old data, right? So we have a lot of different ways that we can go about it. For example, if you're an existing, you have an existing SIM in place, we can look at how we can use Chronicle to actually position and perhaps ingest some of the other logs which you're not taking in. Right? So you can have it running in parallel and understand and see the value out of it, and more importantly, how you can use the SAW platform to orchestrate it. Right? Chronicle SAW being a vendor-agnostic platform, it doesn't matter whether you're using Chronicle or if you're using an existing SIEM tool, we can perform the orchestration across of it. Right? The second vertical, so cloud threat detection and incident response. Right? So our products by default will integrate very natively with the GCP platform as a whole. So how quickly can you actually set them up, ingest the logs in, and understand what is happening on your environment, and respond to it in real time. And lastly, embarking on what we call as the autonomic security operations, right? So if you're ready to transform how your current SOC actually works, we have security advisors who can actually come in and show you, hey, these are some of the best practices that you can use as part of how Google runs its SOC, how we've actually seen customers around the world actually using it, and you can leverage on the intelligence there as well. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. Before we end, any questions that you might have about anything that we have shared?
Any question or anyone wants to share anything? I will walk around. Okay, is there anything that you want to share? Yes, you may.
Can we get a copy of the presentation?
I think the presentation slides might be available online. Will it? Yeah.
You can give me your email address, I will email to you, all right? So, how about the rest? Okay.
I wanted to ask, why are you using YARA-L? Why not other existing languages already available?
Okay, so the way that the Chronicle platform is actually built, so we talk about the history of how Chronicle was built, right? So it was designed in-house by Google, right? And back then, instead of using existing, languages that we actually find, we found that, hey, using YARA-L is actually more efficient when you're writing out detection rules, right? For example, if in a traditional SIM, you might need to build a detection rule of, let's say, 50 lines of rules or queries to write. You can do it in YARA, maybe 20 or 25, right? So it could be potentially half of that, which makes it a more efficient language to actually build and run on. Right? So YARA is actually also used in VirusTotal. So as a subset of that, we extend the YARA-L capabilities into Chronicle SIM for that as well.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. How about the rest? Anything to share? No right or wrong answer. You are feel free to share your opinion. Yes, anything? Okay, all good? All good, okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwin, for the wonderful presentation. Once again, please give a big clap to Mr. Edwin.
And thank you.
All right, just make yourself comfortable because we have another show by 3:15. Please stay around 3:10 because we have the last show of the day will be by Swiss Army team. All right, please take your time to visit the booth and come here by 3:10. Thank you very much. Have a good day.